Testing.
Good evening and welcome to this evening's Agenda Briefing Forum. This evening is not a decision-making forum, it is a briefing on the agenda for the Ordinary Council meeting which will be held on Tuesday the 12th of December 2023. I'd like to remind everyone in the chambers to ensure that comments are respectful to the Council and all meeting attendees, including city officers and those in our public gallery. Please note this meeting is being live streamed. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Item 3, announcements. There are none this evening. Item 4, attendance. Councillor Bull is attending by electronic means and Councillor Ostrowski is on approved leave of absence. All other councillors are present in the chamber this evening. Item 5, disclosures of interest. Are there any councillors who have an interest to disclose? Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 10.2.1 on page 110 of the online agenda, it mentions Bayswater Waves. My son has swimming lessons at Bayswater Waves. It's an impartial interest. I'll remain in the room.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I'll move on to item 6, deputations. This evening we have 5 in-person deputations and I will explain how the process will work. Each person who is presenting a deputation will be invited to come forward and speak at the microphone for up to 5 minutes. As we get close to the end of the 5 minutes, I'll let you know so that you can conclude your deputation. Once you have finished, the councillors may have some questions for you. So our first deputy doesn't seem to be here. So I'll move on to the next person. And it is in relation to item 10.3.3, Maylands Lakes Environmental Restoration. Steve Chloe, if you would like to come forward, and please state your name and suburb.
Good evening, councillors. Good evening, Mayor. Thanks for letting me come along today to do a deputation. Much appreciated. I'm sure you've all been bombarded over time by me with emails in relation to this issue. It's been constant in my family's life for 12 years now. We have had our amenity completely destroyed for a very long time, and it has to end. There is no doubt about that. Over $1.2 million worth of this council's money has been spent trying to rectify this issue, and we have got nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And I appreciate how difficult it has been for this council to try and manage this issue, but when you can't sell your family home and realise its value, and your kids can't use their backyard, there is a serious problem. It's not just an amenity problem, it's a health problem. And I believe that the state government and possibly the federal government should be engaged to help us get through this problem, because the money and the time and the effort that's going to be required to fix this, I really don't think the council has that capability. And I had a very good meeting recently with Alex Devine. He's here tonight. It's the first time in many years where I've seen someone with a lot of passion walk through the door. This young man wants to make a difference. I was very encouraged that he had the bravery to walk through my front door, to be honest, knowing how difficult it's been for our family. So I appreciate your time, Alex. And I think we need to give this guy some real clean air to work with. I think he needs to be able to, get a scientific advisory board established, get some clean eyes on this affair. I think there's been a lot of people in the past and organisations in the past that have put their 2 cents in. The fact remains, nothing has worked. So people need to start taking a step back, and that includes Friends of Maylands Lakes. They have been involved at various stages throughout this process. They have made recommendations. Back in 2015, this council made a recommendation that they must consult with the Friends of Maylands Lakes. They had all good intentions, the Friends of Maylands Lakes, and they still do. However, nothing distracts from the fact that nothing has worked to rectify this issue. So now we need fresh eyes, and that is a scientific advisory board to have a good look at this and make recommendations, and fresh ones, based on science. And I hope that the recommendations that this young man has put forward are listened to, and that this council passes his report and takes it on board. My wife was going to be here tonight, she couldn't, but a person who lives close by to me who is also affected by this lakes issue, he's here tonight. His name is Nick Lang. So I would like to ask the leave of the Mayor that he also does a deputation tonight to explain the impact that he's had on his household over time. Marie couldn't make it, and Nick has been able to make it, so I'd ask the Mayor would give him leave to come up here and speak as well. But from my point of view, let's listen to someone that's got a bit of passion now, who wants to take things forward. And I'd appreciate it if you passed his recommendations. But thank you for your time tonight, councillors, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your deputation. I'll just, before you sit down, I'll just ask councillors if they have any questions of you.
I think every councillor here has had hundreds of emails from me. We could go on forever. Like, we've spent at least $13,000 just replacing pool filters, replacing blinds, replacing outdoor furniture in our home, having friends over where we have to lock ourselves in the house because we just can't go outside and enjoy it. When we first moved in there 12 years ago, I used to stand out the back looking over that lake going, this is just magnificent. But that quickly turned. And I know how hard it's been for this council, and I really think you're in a difficult position. And I really hope that you engage the state government, Reece Whitby, get him on board, get the health department on board, and try and find that. It's going to cost a lot of money. And I've spoken to neighbours who think, you know what, if it's too big a problem, let's fill them in a bit. Let's create smaller lakes. Let's create a beautiful parkland. Let's have a Sunday market out in the parkland. Let's have a beautiful environment. At the moment, it's just sludge. It's a sludge pit,
Thank you very much for your deputation.
All right,
I don't
thank
think there
you.
are any questions. Thank you. The next person is Marie, which isn't here. So I'll just go to the next person, which is Craig Ashton. If you don't mind stating your name and suburb.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name's Craig Ashton. I'm in Maylands, 55 Clarkson Road. I actually back onto the lake, Lake Burleigh, and I've been there for 20 years now. Just in terms of the proposal today, I support the officer's recommendation, but subject to council also requiring that dedicated focused action be taken to immediately reduce the cyanobacteria in the lakes to acceptable levels. As this is a matter of urgency, and I'll detail that at the end of the discussion. Just in terms of background, the focus to date has been on managing midges and the ecology of the lake, which are important matters and do need to be addressed. However, a much more serious hazard has arisen, which is not getting adequate attention, which is my concern and the reason for this deputation. Most of the community are unaware of the significant hazard, as they have not been informed. Cyanobacteria levels in the lake are between 140 and 240 times greater than the Department of Health's guidelines. This is referenced in other City of Bayswater documentation, but it has not been included in this agenda pre-read. The agenda omits this very important fact, which provides relevant context to the need for urgent action. The alarming issue is that living beside a lake with elevated cyanobacteria levels or downwind of an algal bloom can increase risk of contracting motor neuron disease by as much as 25 times. To emphasize the concern, motor neuron disease affects the nerves in the brain and spinal cord that control muscle function, causing death. Most people die within 2 to 3 years, so that does sound a bit alarmist, but that's the facts that we're dealing with. Cyanobacteria exposure also elevates the risk of Alzheimer's disease. So the Maylands Lakes problem has escalated from one of amenity due to midges and smelly, unsightly algae to one which is now posing a serious health hazard. Given the problem has escalated, I feel we have a slow-boiled frog scenario where the elevated health risk is not understood and that consequently insufficient action is being taken on this urgent matter. Specific examples are the following. The important context just mentioned above is omitted from this agenda. So the understanding the importance and urgency of the matter is probably not available to councillors. The risk assessment contained in the agenda omits the greatest risk being the ongoing 24/7 exposure of residents to cyanobacteria. Council has not notified the community, and council officers who became aware of this hazard some time ago did not immediately turn off Lake Burleigh Fountain, thereby carelessly continuing to expose residents to contaminated spray. I had to request the fountains be turned off myself immediately after I became aware just a few days ago. The agenda also does not provide any plan to urgently address this hazard. The agenda references long-term studies which will take years. More urgent immediate action is required to dilute dangerous and rising toxin levels. In conclusion, I support the officer's recommendation, subject to council also requiring that dedicated focused action be taken to immediately commence reducing the cyanobacteria. This would include the following. Really, we should expedite the action to remove or dilute cyanobacteria, starting with fast-tracking the water mixing trial. The required license amendments and approvals for this trial should not take 3 to 6 months as referenced in the documents, especially given the residents' ongoing exposure to the hazard. Budget for and manage the reduction of cyanobacteria levels should be managed as a discrete item on an ongoing basis. This needs a focused, dedicated budget and accelerated action plan. We need to notify the residents of the hazard. They need to know when planting was done around the Maylands Lakes, people were planting sedges and getting in the water. They're not aware of the hazard, so they're exposing themselves. Regarding item 3 of the officer's recommendation, and this gets to the scientific advisory panel, we need to ensure that the candidates have the credentials and experience to deliver a sustainable solution based on a proven objective approach that is in the best interest of residents, the community, and the environment. We've been at this for 7 years. This really has to work. We need the best people, and we also need to involve the community. So just regarding candidates, They should be vetted to ensure success. Selected candidates should have a demonstrated track record of delivering successful outcomes to the specific problem. We need actual practitioners, not mere academics. We need to avoid potential conflicts of interest to ensure they will not be a future, well, specifically ensure that a future potential supplier of equipment would not be biased.
Mr
in their
Ashton, you're
recommendations.
reaching the 5 minutes, if you could conclude.
Regarding the community, they should be engaged in the process. The terms of reference and the comprehensive scope of the SAP should be made available to the community before presenting to council for approval. And Mark Dobrowski should be appointed as a community representative on the SAP. Mark has a PhD in biology, is currently a principal rehabilitation scientist at Luca. He's an adjunct professor at Murdoch University and a senior lecturer at UWA. This representation by community is important to gain and maintain resident trust on this matter. For example, there's a
Mr
perception-
Ashton, if you could
Yep, I'm
just
finished.
conclude now, please.
There is a perception by members of the community that certain officers believe the lakes are designed to fail and they need to be filled in with reclaimed land sold to cover cost. That sort of pre-baked solution is not helpful and will not be accepted. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just ask councillors if they have any questions for Mr Ashton. Councillor Maleka.
Thank you for your deputation. I just wanted to get a bit more information about the statistics regarding the motor neurone disease link. I might have missed where you said you received your information from. I was taking notes at the time and I think I missed what.
So it's included in the GHD report, the specific levels, and there's a presentation by a council officer which includes the fact that the levels are 140 to 240 times the acceptable levels from the Department of Health's perspective.
Okay, but the actual facts regarding the link to MND, where was that source from?
That's various journals. You can Google that anyway in terms of, including Australian government departments. There's a link between this algae and specifically this bacteria. I didn't include, it also affects breathing, so affects lungs as well.
Okay, I'll just preface this with saying I actually run a charity that funds motor neurone disease research.
Yep.
And so I understand there's a study happening in New South Wales at the moment, but they haven't actually made that conclusion that there is a definite link. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up.
There are various studies across the world.
Yeah, so it's still undergoing.
Well, in the US and others, no, there are other, if you like, we can provide background on this. Maybe the one in
Sure.
Australia is ongoing, but it is a fact that there is a link.
Okay, I would
There's
like to see a
also,
bit
in
more
terms of
information. Thank you.
patients, no, what's also been confirmed is patients in autopsies of following motor neuron disease and Alzheimer's have actually had this bacteria in the brain cells.
Okay. Yeah, if I could have a bit more information, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
I actually have a question. Just as you were responding to Councillor Maleka's question, you referenced a council officer's presentation
Yes.
that stated levels or something.
Yes.
I'm wondering how you came across that council officer's presentation.
That was from Friends of Maylands Lakes.
Provided a copy of the officer's presentation.
Showed me the presentation with that statistic. So by merely stating the levels, it's meaningless to the man in the street. You need to reference what it means in terms of relative to health guidelines, and it is 140 to 240 times the guideline as referenced by the officer in that presentation. I can forward that presentation to, we can arrange for it to be forwarded.
Thank you very much.
Right, welcome.
I'm going to actually, given that Marie Chloe didn't attend, I'm going to go next to, is it Nick? Nick, if you'd like to, I don't know, I didn't hear your surname, sorry. So if you don't mind coming forward and stating your name and suburb.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor, councillors, thank you. Look, this is very on the spot.
Sorry, if you
Steve-
just state your name.
Oh, sorry, my name's Nick Lange, and I'm in Maylands as well, around Lake Brearley. Very on the spot, so a couple of little notes I've just jotted down, and I guess I just wanted to give you guys an idea of the impact that it has on us on a day-to-day basis. You know, look, I've just written down, like, we are literally prisoners in our home. Oh, shit. Sorry. But this is what we're going through every single day. You know, we can't use our inside area. We can't use our swimming pools. The blanket of midges over our pool is ridiculous. The kids can't use it. Look, we're still expected to be paying our rates. We keep receiving overdue rates bills. There's a few of us who have refused to pay 50% of our rates. I'd like to know what's happening with that. I think it's extremely unfair that we should be paying our rates when we cannot use our amenities throughout the year. It's been mentioned that, you know, this is a health hazard now. It's gone further than just a problem for the residents. It's actually a health issue. You know, I posted a video a few days back on the Friends of Maylands Lakes site where there's millions of midges in my garage and you can actually hear them buzzing. Like, these things don't really make a noise, but, you know, we can hear how many of them are. I also put an invitation out there for anyone on the council to come and have a look. Come down at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. No one got back to me about that, so maybe we'll hear something in the future. I love the idea of, you know, what was mentioned. There's a hydrologist on the Maylands Lakes Committee, I believe. You know, the idea of connecting the lake to the golf course and getting some circulation through there. You know, it's been what I guess I'm frustrated with is that every time I hear or see something come out, it's, you know, it's going to take 1 or 2 years to do some research, and then there's, you know, we just don't have time for this sort of stuff anymore. Something's got to be done. Something's got to be done now. On the health issues, look, my wife walks the dogs twice a day. You know, she walks around that area and comes back covered in midges. I'm talking like through her hair, on her face, on her clothes. She's breathing in midges. It stinks. You know, these are day-to-day things that we're having to put up with. You know, I've called the council a number of times about getting a residential midgie trap put in my backyard. I haven't heard anything back from anyone regarding that. Yes, we've been issued the chemical, but I don't know how to spray the chemical properly. Surely it's dangerous for someone to do it when it's, you know, it's not done professionally. You know, I won't say some of the other things that I wrote here, but you know, there's potential to go to the media as well. Is that something that we want to do? I don't know, as a group. Maybe that's something, but that's just my thoughts. It's gone on too long. I think Steve was a bit emotional. I am too. Something's got to be done. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much for your deputation. I'll just check. Do any councillors have questions for Mr. Lane? No. Okay. So we'll move on to the next person, which is Kevin Hammersley.
Thank you, Mayor. My deputation was quite long.
Sorry, if you could just for the the people.
Yes, Kevin Hammersley, tour record in Maylands. I'm the chair of the Friends of Maylands Lakes. Due to the time restrictions, I'm going to probably chop and change my presentation, but you do have copies of it in full. Look, the recommendation seeks to abandon all the previous work that has been done. There have been several studies done since the formation of the lakes, 2016. The first one was in fact a holistic approach to fixing the lakes. But the new course of action coincidentally aligns with the preferred approach of the city officers. But I'd like to just have a quick look at some of the actions the city has taken over the years, in that 7 years, or lack of action. Of the 12 stormwater drains identified as requiring treatment, only one has been completed and there are no plans for the others. Solar pumps recommended in 2016 to circulate water were never installed. The supplier of the mixers recommended 2 units per lake. City officers recommended 1 each. Consequently, most of the lakes are still stratified. The dredging contractor for Lake Brearley recommended a 12-week program. City officers recommended 8 weeks. Consequently, midge breeding grounds were not removed as required. City officers recently committed to removing the cormorant breeding trees on Lake Brearley from 3 islands. Only 1 island was cleared, so the cormorant simply moved to the next island, where they continue to add nearly half a tonne of nutrients to Lake Brearley every year. So one can only wonder what the results would have been like had the city fully engaged with the water issues 7 years ago and fully implemented all the recommendations. I'm just going to chop and change. Look, just getting back to the approach of this recommendation, which, I'll read it out. The document reveals that city officers have a passion and an overwhelming conviction that the lakes must be restored using environmental approaches. It's like environmental approach or no approach. There's a real resistance to using mechanical engineering solutions. And if you look at the front page of the recommendation, point 3 in the summary, it refers to a preferred approach to create a sustainable, ecologically sound, self-regulating lake system. We would all love that to be the case, but it's not a lake system, it's a mine site. It's very important to keep that in mind. And an important piece of information missing from that submission, a meeting was called by city officers with Wayne Edgelow, a water management expert, to discuss changing the morphology, the shape and depth of Lake Brearley. Wayne estimated the cost to be between $20 million to $50 million to reshape the lakes. And it was at this point the Friends of Maylands Lakes realised we had to come up with more feasible and practical solutions. And now look, I know this has been covered, but the cyanobacterial link has been in the public space for many years now. There's no mention of the levels that Craig spoke about just recently, but 140 to 240 times over the permitted limit is just devastating for residents. And as Craig mentioned, one of the neurological diseases is motor neuron disease. It's fatal and it's incurable. But for us, the most extraordinary thing was that the city officers cited these figures not to press for immediate action to fix the lakes, but to stop the water mixing trial proceeding. I'll ask a rhetorical question. How many residents in Maylands have motor neuron disease? And the answer is you don't know, because it's not a reportable disease. So this is what we find absolutely incomprehensible about these recommendations. The city knows that Maylands residents are being exposed to a potentially lethal toxin up to 240 times over the safe limit, but their preferred option is to commission another report that may improve water quality in several years' time.
Mr Hammersley, you've reached 5 minutes if you could get to the
Okay.
conclusion.
I'll just jump to a major point. Okay, the only option to improve water quality now is the water mixing trial, which city officers have misrepresented as a health risk to such an extent that the city insurer would not accept liability for injury or illness. Which begs the question, has the city notified the insurer that residents are being exposed to cyanotoxins up to 240 times over the safe limit without any action being taken to reduce the risk? Surely you understand you cannot insure against the consequences of this negligence and inaction. And quickly, in summary, we are not opposed to the formation of an expert group to develop a long-term solution to the water quality. But it must have a broad remit to allow experts in all areas of water management, including mines and reservoirs, to have input. As much as we'd all love to have a healthy, self-regulating lake system, the cost, logistics and uncertain outcomes dictate all options must be on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just ask councillors if there are any questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Kevin, for your deputation. I'm trying to understand which aspect of the recommendation you are objecting to, or the Friends of Maylands Lakes are objecting to, noting that in 3A of the recommendation it says authorising the CEO to continue progressing the water mixing trial.
Yep, and we absolutely support that. I'm concerned that it won't be supported, but we do want that program to continue. But given that we just found out what the toxic levels are, we need more than just that water mixing program now. We need another mechanical pumping solution, filtration system, reverse osmosis. Then we urgently need to look at other options now.
So Kevin, sorry, so which aspect of the recommendation you're objecting to? Because you mentioned that the Friends are supportive of the scientific advisory panel
Yep, look,
and the work on a master plan that we look at
the
all
problem
options.
is it's a very narrow, it's a one-dimensional report. If you look at all the people recommended to go on that report, they're all environmental scientists. There is no room for mechanical engineers, for people with mining and reservoir experience to be on that panel. So you're going to get, well, you're asking a question that you already know the answer to. So my concern is it must be a broader open scope where we can explore all the options, because chances are, look, it's a mine site. You cannot turn the mine site into a natural wetland. It's just not going to happen unless you spend $50 million, which we know that's going to happen. So we need to be more open-minded with kind of a broader acceptance of the solutions.
So if I can narrow it down so councillors can understand what's the objection, is it to the specifics of the fields of people that will be on the panel? Is this why? It says here,
Yep.
form, administer and facilitate a scientific advisory panel of experts in the field of applied ecology, environmental engineering, environmental science, environmental biology and hydrology. So the issue is with those fields?
We want a broader,
broader.
and also we need, there is no community input into that panel either. There needs to be community input, and as Craig suggested, we would support Dr. Mark Dobranowski being.
So is this the bit that the Friends is concerned about
fundamentally
with
it.
the recommendation?
Yep, but more importantly, there is no plan other than our water mixing project to do anything about the current levels of cyanobacteria. And that really concerns us. It's a plan to delay progress. The report, the recommendation refers to additives to the water as an interim solution. Frankly, it's nonsense, because Lake Burley had a very intensive application of aquaretin, about 6 treatments. Absolutely nothing happened. The lake is dead. There are no algae that can feed on that aquaretin to take effect. GHD have stated in their reports that Phosphop has no impact when there's high algal blooms happening in lakes. So this idea that we can use additives in the time being is nonsense.
So can I ask Kevin, I'm sorry, just to understand, so which other measures you think are missing that should be taken in the short term?
Well, you need to relook at the budget, because you need to budget for immediate action to introduce pumping proposals. You need to broaden the scope of the expert committee.
Yep.
And you need to take immediate action to do something about this.
So pumps, is this what is missing?
Pumping filtration and
Sorry.
that's the main thing.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to understand what is missing, like specifically, because I understand you guys already have a position on this. So the pumps are the component that is missing here?
Pumping filtration.
Yes.
Filtration?
Look, we need other options.
But the Friends do not have other options already that are known to the Friends. Is this what you're saying? You don't have other options that you're aware of?
No, our option was the water mixing project, which
Okay.
has been.
And this, and this is here?
Yes, it's still there. We're not confident that it's going to get up. So,
Okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
that's our main concern.
Thank
We are
you.
not confident
Okay.
that it's going to get up.
I will ask questions about it later. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Mr Hammersley. Councillors, we've also received 14 written deputations tonight. One written deputation has been submitted by Jamie Harnwell in relation to item 10.3.2 Gibney Reserve Pavilion lease agreement, and 13 written deputations have been submitted in relation to item 10.3.3 Maylands Lakes environmental restoration. These have been provided to councillors and are available on the city's website with the list of deputations, and I will take those as read. I'll now move on to item 7, questions on agenda reports. Councillors, I haven't received in advance any questions from councillors for any of the items. So I'll just go around the table. Pardon?
I did submit questions, but we can go
Okay.
through this in the order.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I mean,
Which item?
I think we should start with the lakes, if I can suggest to the Mayor.
Of course.
Just because we have so many people here.
No problem. So feel free to ask your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so I do have questions to the officers, quite a lot, and most of them are with regards to the questions and issues that the deputies have raised. So I wanted to ask, first of all, if the city can elaborate on the concern that was raised about those figures around 140 to 240 times levels of cyanobacteria and the health risk. If those figures are known to us and how we're going to mitigate it, is this the master plan will deal with that? So where that come into play with all of this?
I'll go to the director.
Through the chair, in terms of the master plan, that will look at the levels of cyanobacteria in the lakes and how to remediate that in the longer term. The thinking is that if the lake is returned to a healthy state, then those levels will be maintained at an acceptable level. But what I'd need to probably clarify is that
Sorry, Director, I think there's some people having trouble hearing you at the back, so if you could please speak more.
sorry about that. In terms of the master plan, it will look at returning the lake to a situation where it's not generating the cyanobacteria. But what we probably need to also clarify is the fact that when we start talking about the levels of cyanobacteria and when we start talking about being 140 to 240 times the acceptable level, what we're talking about, the acceptable level is actually relating to the acceptable level for recreational water use. So when we look at those lakes there, they're not actually active recreation lakes. When we talk about recreation lakes, we're talking about people using the water in terms of going in the water, using kayaks and things like that. So in terms of what the acceptable level is, you've got to put it in context in terms of what that use of that lake is. But in terms of reducing cyanobacteria, that will be something that will be looked at as part of the master plan to basically bring it down.
So can I ask, so those levels were mentioned in the GHD report, the last one?
That is correct. The GHD report basically looks at a range of criteria and factors in the water, and they take readings, and those figures were quoted in that report.
In what context, Director? So they were mentioned, I'm assuming, as a risk. So I'm trying to understand whether GHD did the differentiation that you are doing now between the type of lake that we have and the recreation aspects of the levels. So when they did mention it, without reading now the report, do you remember the context of why they mentioned it?
Through the chair, the report just quotes what the figures are in the lakes. They don't necessarily compare it to what the acceptable level is for particular use of the lake. They'll just quote what was actually the reading when they took the sample.
Thank you. What are the immediate actions that the city is planning to undertake in parallel to the work on the master plan to reduce those levels of cyanobacteria?
Through the chair, I mean, what we probably need to do is put it in context that we don't encourage people to go in the water. We actually have signs already around the lake that say not to enter the...
Sorry, as I said at the beginning, if we could please remain respectful to everyone in the room, please. Please. Sorry, I'm going to ask again if you could please be respectful to everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, we do have signs around the lake saying people not to enter the water and that there is a hazard there.
So in other words, the director is saying that we're not proposing to take any new actions to deal with that risk in parallel to the work of the master plan. Is this what you're saying?
Through the chair, we'll always look at with how we can reduce the cyanobacteria in those lakes. So it is something that we are looking at actively, and we are looking at ways that we can bring it down. We are talking to various people and looking at ways that we can bring it down as soon as possible.
Thank you. About the fountains that was mentioned as well, I understand that they are closed at the moment. Is that correct?
Through the chair, those fountains, they're actually connected to a weather station that if there's windy conditions, they should turn off. There was an issue where they didn't turn off. We turned them off once we got notified that they weren't turning off automatically.
So are we planning to keep them closed, or what's the plan for those fountains?
Through the chair, we can keep them closed. We can turn them off and leave them off if that's a concern for residents.
Thank you. About the scientific advisory panel, can the director please explain the process, if there is already a planned process for that panel, and any information that you can share? Some people are not aware of what that will look like, and specifically about the remit for that panel, and who will sit on the panel, and there were some concerns about the specific fields. So are you able to share any information how the city is going to deal with the panel?
Through the chair, what we're looking at is what we want to do is create a panel of experts. We want to get the best people possible on that panel. To establish that panel, we will be seeking the assistance of a consultant to basically determine what the makeup is, what the qualifications, the experience, and so forth that's required to get that to get those people on the panel, and how to go about finding those people. We do have contacts internally, but we are going to seek the assistance of a consultant to pull that together. At this point in time, I haven't got the specific details, but that will be commenced once we've got the decision to go ahead. We'll get that consultant on board and we'll get that process happening.
Will the public be able to be aware, for example, on the city's website about the process, who will sit, the fields and all that information around the panel, once the city figures out, what the process is?
Through the chair, yes, definitely we can make that information available.
Thank you. About the fields of the professionals that will be on the panel, is this a closed fields in the recommendation 3B, or that is just a few examples and the city will consider other fields?
Through the chair, we want to get the best people possible and to resolve the issues there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be limited to this. We can get additional people as well if required.
Okay, thank you. There was also mentioned that the city is there is some resistance in the city to use any mechanical solutions. Can you elaborate on that? Has the city used any previous mechanical solutions, the mixers and all that stuff? Are they considered mechanical solutions?
Through the chair, we have used mechanical. I mean, we've got the mixers operating at the moment. There's been ultrasonics. We've had dredging done there. So we use mechanical methods, and what we believe is that once we go to developing the master plan, that will incorporate a range of methods of dealing with the condition out there. So whether that be natural vegetation, additives, treatments, it could be a whole range of things. We don't know exactly what the makeup is at this point in time. The idea is to get the panel together and get the master plan developed through a consultant, and we can then know what that solution is.
Thank you. I do have more questions, Madam Mayor. Some of the deputations, the written deputations, raised concerns about the dense and decaying plant material, specifically around Lake Brearley and the issues around that, and the need to clear that ground foliage. Is this something that the city already looked at or planning to look at?
Through the chair, I'll probably pass that question on to the environment manager. I know he's looked into it.
Thank you. Through the chair, City officers have explored this option. We understand midge predominantly breed within the water column. The proposal identified the suspicion that the midge were occurring within the rotting vegetation. On review of the life cycle, that did not seem to be apparent. Additionally, it was identified that vegetation is also something that screens houses from midge, so it was identified that removing vegetation may in fact exacerbate the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the city also consider putting this information on the website so everyone can be aware of that?
Yeah, through the chair, we certainly can.
Thank you. Around the water mixing trial, it was also mentioned in the deputations. Can the city explain what's the status, the current status of that project, and noting and explain the recommendation? Because I read it as the city is still looking into this, but some think that the city already concluded not to progress with it. So can the city explain, please?
Through the chair, we have designs drawn up and specifications drawn up for the water mixing trial. We're at the point now of going out and getting quotations for the work, for the installation. So what we'll do is this week, we've already started contacting some of the companies out there that can do the work. There will be an RFQ document that's going to go out to those companies to provide prices back to the city. What we also need to do is develop an operational management plan for the system, because we're not just going to go and put it in and switch it on and forget about it. We need to operate it within constraints to ensure that we manage all the risks attached to such a system. But we also, through that process, we're also engaging with our insurers to make sure they're also comfortable with what we're proposing out there.
Thank you. Two more questions, Madam Mayor. Is the master plan going to explore all options?
Through the chair, it will. The thinking is that to date, we've been looking at the water body mostly and not really looking much further outside of that. We're now considering that we need to look at the broader area to look at other opportunities as well. So, for example, the water mixing is looking at bringing bore water into the system, but there could be other opportunities to bring other water sources into the system. So things like that we need to expand and look at a broader area. So we are open to all options and ideas, and that's the whole thinking behind the expert panel, that they'll be able to point us in the right directions.
Thank you. My final question, Madam Mayor, is about the timeframes for the master plan. Do we already know, and I did ask that question last night, do we already have some idea around the timeframes and what the constraints are when it comes to those timeframes to complete the master plan with recommendations for actions?
Through the chair, I haven't got the exact dates or anything like that at this point in time. Obviously, we need to develop a scope. That scope needs to come back to council. As part of the recommendation is that it comes back and gets endorsed by council. So once that scope's endorsed, then we can basically get that master plan commenced. Difficult to say how long. It just depends on the various steps that we put in there, depending on how much consultation we need to do with the community and the different milestones that get put in there. So it's difficult to say exactly what that time frame is. If I was to take a stab at a particular time frame, I'd say once the scope's developed, probably looking at about 12 to 18 months potentially, but it could also take longer depending on how many stages we have in terms of engagement with the community.
Thank you. And Director, is funding a constraint when it comes to the timeframes? And in other words, whether the available funding for this project, if there was more funding, would the city be able to shorten the timeframes?
Through the chair, in terms of developing the master plan, we're asking for funding, or there's a budget amendment that we're talking about in this report. That should be sufficient to carry on with the development of the master plan.
The quickest as possible? This is the question.
Probably the driver for that is depending on how many milestones we put into the project. So the funding would not make any difference apart from the fact that if council approves it next week, then we can basically get moving on the project. fairly quickly.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Ladder?
We heard tonight in the deputations some public concern about the blue-green algae. Can we get, and that it wasn't in the report, can we get some additional information from the city on that, perhaps as an addendum or something that can be shared with residents?
I'll go to the director.
Through the chair, yes, we can put something together before the council meeting and have that put together as an addendum, which will be made public.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just go to the CEO for a few comments.
Yeah, just through the chair, just to add to that, we're more than happy to probably put together a bit of a public statement. We can get that up onto our website on our Bayswater News, and at least that way that can provide some clarity to the community in relation to that item, councillor. But I also just wanted to touch on a couple of things from the Deputy Mayor just in relation to the water mixing trial, just to reassure the council and the community that that item is progressing. I met with the Friends of group last week and gave them that commitment, and I'll give them that commitment again publicly, that that item is progressing through the administration. And as the Director indicated, the RFQ is ready to go on that. There's also some good points that were raised tonight in terms of the field of experts as well. And that's something that we can take on board and maybe look at an addendum coming back next week, or if a councillor wants to move something alternate to include that, because that can be expanded to include a community representative or some of that mechanical engineering or mine site engineering that's been raised this evening as well. The other item that I just wanted to raise is in relation to the midge management as an immediate action as well. City officers are talking with other local governments in relation to their midge management plans, and we're going out and saying, what are you doing at your lakes and infrastructure that you've got that we may be able to implement at Maylands as well, just so that we can make sure that the directed effort with the money going into the midge management is done in the most efficient and effective way.
Thank you. I have a question to the director. On under financial implications in the report, it states that the city has been allocated $450,000 in funding from the Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water through the Urban Rivers program. Can I please be advised when the city was allocated those funds?
Through the chair, I'll need to take that on notice and get the exact dates of when that, when we receive the funds.
I don't think it's when we've received it, because the report then goes on to say, given this funding source is not yet secured and the time frame unknown. So my understanding is that we haven't received the funds, but I'd like to know when we were promised it, given that we haven't received it, and understand what's the delay.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, sorry about that. I actually, when I say received, it's actually about being promised the money, not necessarily that we've received the funds into our accounts. The funds were meant to come through last financial year, and we've carried that over to this current financial year.
I think. Sorry? So you can follow up what's delaying it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, councillors? No? Okay, thank you. Are there any other items that councillors have questions on this evening? Councillor Ladder?
Thank you. On 10.1.3, brickworks, I would like some help to understand what rezoning options were explored with the CRG.
I'll go to the director. Oh, which is the manager. I'll go the manager.
Through the chair, the CRG itself didn't consider rezoning of the site. The CRG, when it was convened back in 2022, was asked to consider land use options for the site and what was appropriate given the existing uses and what they would like to see on the site in the future, not the land use, not the zoning, which could then go under those land uses. When the CRG was then reconvened in August 2023, we had 7 of the original 19 members attend. Their purpose was to discuss funding options. So rezoning wasn't specifically addressed at that time either. It was raised by those members of the CRG who were in attendance that rezoning the site for public open space and potentially using cash in lieu funds was an alternative source of funding, not specifically as a rezoning option. It was looking at the funding options. So at that time, other rezoning options were not considered.
Can I just ask a follow-up? That cash in lieu funds, is that available if that rezoning happens?
There is cash in lieu funds available in the Maylands area. However, it is only for public open space works. It would not be available for maintenance or reactivation of the building itself. You could look in potentially doing the landscaping and any works in the gardens surrounding.
Any other questions on this item? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Just a follow-up question about the public open space issue. So you just said that the cash in lieu public open space cannot be used to repair the buildings, the brickworks. What will be the implications of rezoning the buildings to public open space?
If you were to rezone the buildings public open space, I guess it means that you can only use that land for public open space purposes. So you wouldn't be able to do some of the other land uses which were considered appropriate by the community during the broader consultation. So you would be unlikely to be able to have a museum, you would be unlikely to be able to have a commercial cafe. You could potentially have markets and things in there, but it would be purposes which are ancillary to the public open space use itself.
And those possible uses came from community consultation?
Those ones that I just mentioned, then, yes, they came from the engagement of the broader community and the CRG in 2022.
Thank you. And the city is recommending not to do any rezoning at this stage. Are you able to elaborate a bit more to explain why not rezoning it now and when it will be more likely that we should look at rezoning?
Yes, through the chair. The city's position on this is that the existing zoning does not force anything to happen on the site. It can be used for public open space should the city wish that to happen. The city's position would be that rezoning should occur once the final land use of the site is known and the full intent is understood, rather than rezoning it multiple times to finally get the final zoning which is appropriate for the site. Is better to rezone it once that's known. It's also, there is a chance that if the city does seek funding from other sources, if it's rezoned to something which is highly restrictive, such as public open space, that we are less eligible for grants and other sources of funding because they are unlikely to look favourably on us requiring, I guess, extra steps to allow any new use to occur.
Thank you. And my final question, please. So the current zoning is residential. Is residential a use that is on the table at the moment? Or is it on the table at all as part of this project?
As per the council resolution, no, residential is not on the table at the moment.
So is that council resolution still valid?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Manager.
Any other questions on this item, councillors? I just would seek some clarification because there were 2 questions asked by Councillor Latta and the Deputy Mayor about rezoning to public open space. And I think the Deputy Mayor used the term reclassifying the buildings as public open space, but that's not actually, the buildings aren't public open space? Is that?
Through the chair, if you were to rezone the site, the entire site, including the buildings, becomes zoned public open space.
But the cash in lieu can't be used on the actual maintenance or repair of those physical buildings.
No, they
Just
wouldn't.
to
The cash in
clarify.
lieu would not be able to be used on the repair of those buildings.
Or stabilising it, for instance? No. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this? Thank you. I'll just go around to councillors. Do you have any other questions on any other items this evening? Deputy Mayor?
Yes, thank you. I do have, this is I think what I sent to the city in advance. Item 10.5.2.8, quarterly performance review, corporate quarter 1.
Yep.
Yes. And this is about, so there are a few attachments, I'm sorry, I'm just bringing the attachments. Yep. So my first question is about the CEO's KPIs. And this is about the last KPI for the CEO, prioritize and support the achievement of the city's agreed canopy target. And the feedback or the update that we received was, one of the comments was that council will need to consider and support the planting of trees in the middle of roads as available space in traditional target areas such as parks and verges is nearly exhausted. And my question is, if we can get some more information about that, what's data we have that the space in parks and verges is already almost exhausted, because from what I see, there is ample space in parks and ample space on verges all around the city. But the report says that we almost finished and there is no space, and we only need to look at roads. So can we get some information whether what it's based on, and whether and why?
I'll go to the director. Or,
Take it on notice.
oh,
and we can provide
okay.
some information.
If you want to just,
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm more than happy to take that on notice for the Deputy Mayor, and we can clarify that and get some information in relation to that.
So, thank you. My other question is about the other attachments, the strategies and plans. I'm just looking at what I had here. Yeah, so this is about the access and inclusion plan. And it says that in the figures in the attachment, it says that only there is one delayed, on hold, and most of them are on track, the actions. And I have questions about one of the actions in our existing plan. Action 2.4, improve the pedestrian network accessibility within town centres. And my question is this on track? Because the last time that we received an update at the committee, we were told that it has not been progressed as yet. So I'm trying to understand what's the status of that specific action.
thank you. I'll go to the director.
Thank you. I'll have to take that one on notice, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and I should elaborate. It's 2.4A. Define and audit pedestrian networks accessibility within the city's town centres, precincts of Morley, Maylands and Noranda, including curb ramps, tactile ground surface, etc. Thank you. My other question is with regards, and I will go to the right plan. So it's a bit slow on iPad. The Urban Forest Strategy 2021, it mentions that all the actions are either completed or ongoing, on track. The 17 on track, are we able to get the list of those actions that are currently on track?
Thank you. I'll go to the director. Yep. So, you'll provide those. If
Thank you.
can-
And my last
sorry.
question is
I'll
about...
just get that on the
Oh, I'm sorry,
microphone.
Manager.
My apologies. Yes, we can provide that information to councillors.
Thank you very much. My last question is about the town planning parking management plan for Maylands. It mentions that all actions are either completed or are on track to be completed, and none of them is waiting, which is not what I'm aware of. So the 12 actions that are currently on track, can we please get the details them as well.
I'll go to the manager.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, we can provide
so
that
much.
information.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? If not, I'll ask if there are questions on any other items, Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a question in relation to the Project Eden item. So I've got here 10.5.2.3. I just want to check before I ask any questions. The attachment is publicly available, is that right? I'm not looking at something that's confidential on my
I'll
screen.
just go to the director.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is part of the Audit Committee agenda, and I believe that is publicly available in this agenda.
Okay, no worries, thank you. I just wanted to double check before I ask anything. So on the online version and numbering, there's reference on pages 249, 250 and 252 about delays in the project. I just want to get more detail about how they're being mitigated given the scale of this project.
Through you, Madam Mayor. There were some delays in setting up the system to get it ready for integration testing. There was a delay with receiving the test environment and some delay in actually attracting resources to work on the project, so business systems analysts. We now have those in place. We had built in a bit of a buffer in the project plan. We now have completed, since this report has been prepared, we've completed the setup of the integrations and we're now in the testing phase. We had an initial due date of mid-December for that system integration testing, but with the buffer, we actually have until mid-January before we start full user acceptance testing.
Any other questions from councillors on this item? Okay, I'll ask if there's any other questions on any other items. If there's nothing else, I'll then close the agenda briefing forum at 8:04 p.m. Thanks, councillors.